Hi, welcome back to Off Picture Discussions. I had the pleasure of speaking with Vaal English, someone I worked with as a script supervisor on multiple projects, and most recently, writer-director of a short film, which is now entering the festival circuit. We talk about how Vaal entered the film industry, how he got interested in film in the first place, and where he's going from here. I really hope you enjoy. Here we are. Hello, Vaal English. Welcome.
How are you? What's going on, Gia?
I like being very formal. Hello, Sir Vaal English. How are we doing today? Good. It's
Very
great to
well.
have you
Very
here.
well. I'm glad to be here.
John and I started. Good. I'm glad. John and I started this little ditty, kind of like when you're between projects, right? So when you're not on picture or on, when you're not on picture, you're off picture. So it's kind of like the in between moments when you're kind of waiting to do your next project.
Mhm.
So thank you for being our, I think, actually last guest of this first season before we shoot our next
Oh,
feature.
how nice. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I think you're the finale.
Okay, cool. Look at that.
Okay, let me get you there. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I want to know, and I want everyone listening to know, how you got into film.
Into film. Very beginning. So when I was very young, I knew that I liked storytelling. Uh, so like I would always like play with Legos and whatnot and just like recreate scenes, and I just loved that. So then my dad also used to watch like older films. So, for example, like Full Metal Jacket or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And I would just like sit on the couch next to him and just watch. And I think that's when I was starting to like subconsciously start to develop a liking towards film. Um, but I didn't really know it at the time because I feel like a movie like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is really long, and it might not be appealing to a young kid.
Mhm.
Um, but for some
Right.
reason, I was like always captivated by it, and I watched it multiple times when I was a kid. I don't know if I watched it like from start to finish, but I always caught like different snippets of it. Um,
Right.
and then
So would you say
fast forward.
was your dad was it one of his favorites?
I guess so. I mean, yeah, I guess so. I don't think that's like one of his favorites, but it's one of those films that was just always on cable, on the channels that he was always watching. Um, but
That makes
I don't think I ever,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I don't think I ever watched his favorite films before. Um, but it did later on in life. I realized that's probably one of my favorite films of all time. It's actually my, definitely top three. But going from
Yeah.
that, fast forward to high school. I think I was like a freshman or yeah, I was a freshman at the time, and I watched Avatar, the James Cameron's Avatar. So I went into that not knowing what it was about. And, I like movies. I saw The Dark Knight and whatnot. And I really like movies, but I didn't know that's what I wanted to do. So when I came out of the movie theater watching
Mhm.
Avatar, going in like somewhat blind, and then I came out, and when you watch a movie and you're so like engrossed in the world, and you're just so captivated by it that you don't want to leave. And then when you go back to real life, you're kind of sad. Well, that's the feeling I had. And I
Yes.
was like, I was so like, I was so like caught up in this world. And I was like, and for the time, the imagery was so great and you're so invested in it. And then, I left the theater and I was like, wow, this feeling is sucks, but is also really cool at the same time. And I want to make other people feel
Yeah,
like
because
that.
you get like a you get like a depression, right? Like
Yeah.
it's interesting. I would want to know, I think from you, was it so you felt sad because you were in the experience so much, and then when you left, you had that feeling, but you knew that like conceptually you understood that it was filmmakers making this, like you thought about it being filmmakers making something that made you feel that way, versus like I would have that feeling, but more because I invested in the, like I felt what the characters were feeling. So I almost felt like, and this is silly, but I used to watch Gilmore Girls all the time, and I love that writer because she's so quick. She makes references to everything. Like I just felt like I was so involved in those people's lives that when they were going through something, I felt like I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like go up and down. Like my mom would say, like, uh, maybe like don't want, like you're getting absorbed, like don't do, and maybe that's the actor in me, right? So it was like their
Mm-hmm.
personal lives, but I never once thought about it like, you know, this is when I was younger, but I never once thought about it like, oh, people are making this. It was simply just the storyline I was
Mm-hmm.
into. So
Mm-hmm.
was it earlier on, or was it at this point that you started realizing like, okay, people are making these and I want to start making these? Like when did that shift happen?
I think it was at that moment because I never really made videos or whatnot at the time. So it was at that moment I was like, how do I make that? And so I guess I mean I was at the time I was an outsider. You can because like I was just like an audience. I didn't know the technical side of things. I didn't know how you can. I wasn't thinking like a writer, director, or whatever. So I was just thinking as just someone going in blind, audience watching this, and I'm like, wow, this is a really cool world that was created for for the 2.5 hours that it was or whatever. Um, so then
Mhm.
I said to myself in my head, I was like, I'm gonna make something like that. It might not be that to that extreme, but I'm gonna make something like that one day.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided at that moment that I was gonna do film. Um, yeah. So then in high school, I took it up as an elective. Uh, I think in my junior
Okay.
year. I remember, yeah, and I remember I went to my
Where'd you
guidance
go to high school?
counselor. I, I went to St.
You're
John the
from Long Island.
Baptist. I'm
Oh,
from
yeah,
yeah, I'm
okay.
from Long
St.
Island.
John.
So St. John the
Yeah.
Baptist in West Islip, and so I went to my guidance counselor, and they
Mhm.
almost convinced me not to do it, to take up film. They said that
Right.
I wouldn't. They said that I wouldn't like as a newcomer. I would not have my hands on like the film equipment. I was like, I feel like you don't know what you're talking about, so I'm gonna do it anyway. So I did it, and I got my hands on the film equipment, which was just a camcorder. It's not nothing crazy. But yeah, I went for it, and I ended up really liking it,
Well,
and
what
that
did
was
they
like
mean?
the
What
start of
did,
it.
what did they
What do they
mean by
mean?
that though? Where, yeah, like if you had started younger, you would have your hands on it, or
I don't really know. I think it was more of like probably looking out for me, because you're trying to decide what you want to pursue in college. So I also at that moment I also said I wanted to possibly be in astronomy, but I was really bad at math, so that was not a possibility. Uh, so when I bring up
oh,
film,
so they were maybe,
yeah, yes. What was that?
maybe they thought your sense of reality needed a bit more focusing. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, but
Okay, well that makes sense.
yeah.
I think people do try to guide you. They're trying. They everybody means their best, you know, and when you have a
Hmm.
guidance counselor, like they're trying to keep you on a path that like you can support yourself and like live and I think that's great, but I don't know. Sometimes it's almost like you need to be exposed to someone who has experience to go, you know what? There's never a time like now to go for it, but maybe just think about how are you going to do these practical things as well, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, but it's good
and
that you kind
yeah,
of said, you know, I'm going to do it anyway. You did it.
yeah, and they probably meant well, but at the time when I think back and I'm just like, wow, I mean, what if I did listen to them at that very moment? But who knows? So
Yeah.
I took it up as an elective in high school, and I ended up really liking it and loving it, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it started. And then I
Wow.
guess
And so
I
then you
took
did
it
go
up.
to
I took it
college.
up in college too. Yeah, yeah. Went to SUNY Oswego, upstate New York. It's like 45 minutes up from Syracuse. Yeah, and that's when I started really delving into it, and taking up film theory was a mandatory class as well, and just looking at all these other films from across the world. I think one of my favorite classes was world cinema. That's when I was really um, that's when I really dove into that, and just saw these films from across the world that I don't think might not have even watched if it wasn't for these classes. So I thought that was really interesting and
And
gave me a
that's
different
important too.
perspective.
There's someone that I was just speaking with, and she was like, "Oh, my son is a world cinema major. Would
Hmm.
you and John be willing?" Or she said, "Would I be willing to talk to him?" I'm like, well, I really think that maybe John should talk to him because it's more applicable. Like he went to film school and he
Hmm.
knows all those references, and now it's making me think. You'll have to come back in season 2 of the podcast and just do one with John so you guys can nerd out about all the films because that's
Uh-huh.
certainly the two of your brains, and it's not like I'm on the other side of things where I'm like, you're like an encyclopedia in there, with oh, how about this one and this one and this one, and I just
Hmm.
it's way over my head.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's so important because you have such a and I can tell this with maybe your taste or like funny comments that you make, or like the references when we're on set together of the movies you make are like from such a huge range that it's always
Hmm.
extremely funny what you're referencing. And I
Hmm.
think it's because of maybe something like that class that you have that like scope of knowledge.
Hmm. And I think, like, still at the time when I was watching these films, they were more mandatory for the class,
Mhm.
so I'd be watching a random movie that would have, for the first time, I've never seen a film that had no audio, no soundtrack. It was just diegetic noise. And I forgot what the name of the movie was called, but
Right.
it was a South American movie, I believe, and it was a guy who was traveling from prison through the jungle back to his home, and you just
Okay.
follow this guy, and no soundtrack, nothing. And it was the first time I saw something like that. And I can totally understand why someone would not like that film. But for me at the time, I was kind of in awe. I was like, how can you? He was like, you can make movies like this? Like, there doesn't have to be action packed.
Yeah.
Um, so that, and
Right.
then I was like, you know what? That's when it really, I realized that sound itself was, I think, sound might be the most important part of a film. People always say
It's
the
so funny
acting,
you
it's
say.
the, it,
No, I agree with you
yeah.
1000%. And I came to this
Hmm.
conclusion this past year too. Like, and it too if well, when you see rough cuts, right? And then you see the finished product, like it's pretty apparent that it's terrible. And then sometimes when, after you put the sound in, it's a great movie all of a sudden, like
Hmm.
totally
Hmm.
change because what you're seeing. So to an untrained eye, you think the visual is like most of what you're experiencing because it is a visual medium, but you don't
Hmm.
realize how much of it is your brain processing the sound is influencing what you're seeing. And you really kind of can't explain that to someone unless they see like that rough cut versus like the more finished cut. It's life
Hmm.
changing, and I totally agree with you. And it's like I could write
Hmm.
my thesis paper on that. Sound is like the most important thing. um,
Hmm.
but I think this movie actually sounds fantastic. I would love you to tell me what it is because I will watch it. And it is
I'll
kind of
have to look
reminding
it
me of like
up.
what Dance on Camera. I want to know because I would watch this, and obviously like John would love. Sounds like he would love this.
Hmm.
So
I'll have to look it up.
that's a bold choice.
I
A bold choice for somebody.
I know every couple of years I'm just like, I remember that movie and I forgot the title once again. So I have to look it up and then put it in my letterbox finally. And so I'll do that
Yeah,
after this actually. Um, but yeah,
good. Yeah,
and
because I love that someone even chose to do that.
mhm. And yeah, and like I said, like a lot of the movies were mandatory, so I wasn't really watching movies outside of that class. Like it would be in the class, and I would say, I guess I'm ashamed to say that it wasn't until like maybe a few years ago that I really started to up my game with watching films, and try to I guess, expand the palette a little bit. And
Hmm.
because people would always be like, "Oh, you know that one film?" I'm just like, "No, I don't." So then I realized I don't want to be
That's
that person anymore. I was like, you know what? I want to watch as many films as possible and just really be able to have a discussion about pretty much anything. Even if it's a little bit, I know something
and
about
you
it.
can.
The
That's
the thing that you're talking about.
that's what I would say about you. If someone asked me, like, I would say that that is you. So you've
Oh,
achieved
thank
that
you.
in my very humble opinion because I have a not that I have limited taste in films, but the irony is like the films I like making, the things I find creatively fulfilling to work on are so
Hmm.
not typically what I watch. Like I watch really dumb humored things, escapism, what and then I like to
Hmm.
make very deep things that make you think and feel and whatever. But I mean, we will sprinkle in the occasional project with the fart joke. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
one
yeah.
for
I mean,
me,
people.
seven for John. That's
I mean, Christopher Nolan loves the Fast and Furious, so we're all good. We all have our taste.
yes.
I love Spider-Man 3. I think that's a great film with Toby. I'll die on that hill.
That's the thing. Like yeah, and the thing is, if Chris Nolan's working on Oppenheimer for God knows how long, it's like, he needs a little Fast and Furious in his life. It's
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
good
yeah.
balance, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
No,
but
that's, I love that though, but keep going.
yeah, yeah. I think, and I think what really, like the first 2 years at college, you're just making stuff, you're figuring stuff out, or you're learning how to use the equipment. So then, I think it was like my junior year, they would have like an annual film festival through the film club. And
Hmm.
obviously, if you're really into film and you took it seriously, you would make something and you would submit it. And I think it was like a 36-hour film festival. They had a 36-hour film festival, and then they had a
Okay.
48-hour film festival. So they had two different ones. The 48 one was more horror, and then the 36 was more drama, and they
Mhm.
had different themes. But I think the 36-hour one, I made a little short, um, and it ended up winning, I think like second or third place. And that's the first time I ever
Wow.
won something for like like something that I made. And I was like, "Oh, this is a cool feeling. I like this." And people were coming
Yeah.
up to me and they were like, "Oh, I really like this." And that gave me the confidence to kind of, really push for and realize that, like, you know what, maybe um I do have some creative input in film. I can do this. So yeah, that's when I really started to take it seriously.
You,
Because like the
you,
first couple years, I was like, yeah.
you were, well, and also you're a student and like kind of what you said before about
Hmm.
like you mostly watch these things because they were assigned to you. It's like, yeah, you kind of
Hmm.
don't when you're getting assignments and like that's the school structure, it's nice because they're kind of like giving you your structure and you don't really need to watch things outside of there. So like to dial back to that conversation we had, it's like then you started doing it on your own because you're like, you know what? I actually did like that and I want to do more of that. I want to be a person that knows these things. Now on the more
Hmm.
technical side, I think my question, because I'm curious, is did
Hmm.
you find it difficult? Like, did you always have something to say, or did you find it difficult? Like, you'd have to go sit down and like think about what you were going to make. Like, where did you go with that?
Um, I think, like I said, I always was a storyteller, so I would always have these ideas. And I think from like early on, I would always listen to music, soundtracks. And I forgot when I started listening to the soundtracks, but that would always give me the ideas. I would think of a scene, I'd write the scene, and then I would say, a short film. I would write a short film around that scene, and then, ironic enough, I would scrap the scene that originally uh, was it that or that originally created the short film. Um, so like that, a lot of like whether the short film, whether the scripts were good or not, that's a different story. But like that's how I was able to create with all that.
That's so interesting. 'Cause that's literally how I used to come up with dances, right? Because I obviously
Hmm.
didn't go to film school. I went for choreography, and that is, so I would hear music, and like I would be driving mostly, like the driving and the music together were everything. But I
Hmm.
would just start seeing a whole thing in my head, and like maybe fill in a section, and then I would go back and fill in a different section, but my brain could organize it and remember it all, and then be able to kind of play it out as I'm then listening. So I would like choreograph
Hmm.
the exact same way you're saying you would write. So that's, it's
Hmm.
amazing how art mirrors itself.
Hmm. Yeah,
So, and then so then you come home and you kind of write it down and whatnot, right?
yeah, I mean, I would just think I'm just like, oh, all right, there's a scene in a diner, two people talking, um, and then bam, or something like that, right? And then I would just run with it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I realized early on that is what I wanted to do. Um, but then I think
Yeah.
I took up creative writing as a double major, uh, to coincide with with the
Okay.
writing and then this because I wanted to always do directing writing. That was always the goal.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So, and I mean, it's funny because you and John are very similar in that you early on knew like what you wanted to do, and it's funny because I kind of laughed when you said the thing about the Legos because he has the same thing about the Legos,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
playing with Legos and then kind of starting to shoot films with that, like shoot scenes using the Legos as character. I think he even has some
Hmm.
probably his parents could dig up and we could laugh and watch them. But it was like that, and then she again would watch them at a very young age, like watch films, and
Hmm.
he was just so aware that that's something he wanted to do. And I think people like that are very special because to know that young, like when I said I was like uneven aware that people were I didn't think about the fact that people are making the thing I'm watching. I just went into the story, so
Hmm.
it's like the fact that you had at a very young age this knowledge of stepping back and making the thing, it blows my mind. um
Hmm.
I think it's very cool. uh so I want to know then how, because you do obviously, you have that very like writerly, create, your brain's always moving then.
Hmm.
So
Always
how
moving.
did you, because I know you have this very, you have a very meticulous side to you. You're not, in my, again, humble opinion, you're not the typical creative that you're unorganized. You have a very then meticulous, type A side of you. So can you talk on,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sorry if that's offensive, but to me it's a compliment
No, no, no,
because
you're.
I like organization. So
Uh-huh.
how'd you go into that?
Well, like with in respect to writing.
In respect to writing, but more like getting into then the other things in film you do, script supervising, these other, because you can do anything
Oh,
you kind of want to do, in my opinion. So,
so thank you. Um, so what's funny about that is, I guess I'll do with this. Well, when it comes to writing, I try to.
mhm.
I don't think I've realized how organized I am with certain things until I moved out here
Okay.
and I started to do script supervising because I never wanted to do that.
Okay.
When I was in school, I really didn't know about the other positions. You go to school, you're like, oh, I want to be DP, I want to be a writer, I want to be an actor, I want to be a director, yeah, producer, right? You
Yeah.
don't really well,
Yeah.
I guess like maybe the smaller colleges, they don't really go into depth about the other roles. That's what you learn on set. That's when you learn when you're actually in the field, which I think schools should go over, but I can understand why it's glossed over. Um, so I didn't really know anything about a script
I
supervisor. I never knew what that was. um, and
Amazing.
so, but before I got into film entirely, uh, as a profession, I was working I worked at social media companies, in New York, in the city, and I was an editor. So I would also shoot some of the content and then edit it right there on the same day. Um, so that's where I got that editing, um, mindset, as well as in college too. I
Yeah,
learned how to edit,
that,
but
that makes perfect sense. Like you have the ability
mhm,
to watch something and you're already putting the timeline together, like in your head.
mhm. That's why I think it's
Well,
good
that makes
because like John knows how to edit. It's good for directors to know how to edit because you're already piecing it together in your head. You know exactly what you need in the moment, so you don't waste time on set.
yes, it's very
Um,
important because then you don't have to wonder, did I get it, and like waste time getting an extraneous amount of stuff. You just are like, because John will know, like you're saying, and I know that you're the same way because I've seen you in this moment. But you're like, nope, we got what we need. And someone's like, oh, but what about this? What about that? You're like, no, we got it. Because you
Yeah,
know, you're like, nope, all I needed was this little spot and we're moving on, you know?
it's like we have it, but
So,
if you want to get additional, if you want to get something else, a different version, by all means. But like we have it, or sometimes we don't have it. We need to get this. I think I did that one time
right. Yeah. So,
Isabel's garden.
yeah. Yeah,
Like
you're right. You're like,
that's our
well,
job. It's like
we
yeah. Like we need this.
well, and it's a life, yeah, it's a life-saving position because like you don't want to end up in that editing room and be like, we literally don't have anything to put here and we need it, you
hmm
know?
hmm
So
Yeah.
I'm glad you did find out
Um,
what a script supervisor was because you've been a very pivotal, essential point on a number of projects for me anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to know. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say,
What were you
I
saying?
mean, if we were gonna keep talking about getting into script supervising, well, yeah, because the editing got me into script supervising, and then I didn't discover, I guess, this organized side of myself, this type A
Mm-hmm.
personality when until I moved out here and I started to script supervise, and the position itself requires you to be that. I don't think an unorganized person can do that. So I didn't really think of myself
No.
as that beforehand, and then I started doing it. And I was like, all right, I'm learning a little about myself, which is, it's
Yeah.
cool.
Well, but you know what? You also have to be able to. You have to be able to kind of value, kind of like triage, right? Like what is important and what isn't. Because I think I'm a very organized person. I love things that are organized. I mean, like when someone does something better than me, like as far as a system, I'm like, yes, let's go with that. Let's adapt that. Because it's
hmm
like, I don't know, it's like a sick little thing I enjoy. But
hmm
watching you do that, I'm like, I don't even know if I could do that. And I think
hmm
organization is my thing, but it's because then it's such a fine line getting too controlled versus, you kind of really straddle that line where you're like, we actually, like you said already, we got what we need. Of course, we
hmm
can make everything more and more and more perfect. And I remember you saying this, you're like, I will just keep nitpicking until the person says, no, I'm good, because then it's off my back, you know? So like
Because
you're like, well, technically this and this and this. Go ahead.
yeah, like we need we need a cap. I like script supervisors, me in general, like I need someone to tell me, all right, it's enough, we're good. Because like I will keep bringing up every single thing that's wrong if I find it to be
Yeah.
necessary. Because I don't want to slow down production, but I'll nitpick everything. Um, Especially with
Yeah.
the director, I'll ask like, do you beforehand there'll be a preliminary meeting that I usually do, and I ask about what their expectations are, especially like things like continuity or whatnot. So I'll know how to go about things prior to actually being on set. Um, but yeah, like I'll keep bringing it up until the director tells me, or someone, usually it's the director, will tell me, Val, it's fine. It's okay that her hair was not over here and was back there. It's cool. We have to cut. I'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and then what I think is entry sensor open. I'll just repeat that part. When I, think about that, you also have to in that meeting, I'm sure, because this is where like maybe I'd be like, oh man, this person probably thinks I'm so annoying. You know what I mean? Like I would be like, do you want me to be a perfectionist? Do you want me to pat you on the back, or do you want this? Like, what are you looking for from me? Like, how in the red do you want to get on this thing? But I love watching you work actually with John because um you kind of fulfill my role only like in our private lives. I'm like, oh, this, right? But on set,
Mhm.
on set, it's you doing it, and he's like, I'm good, thank you. And so I get the I'm good, thank you, and so
Uh,
but no, it's
well,
great
yeah, I
because
mean,
he's
because we're
too picky.
yeah, and
Go ahead.
he was a pleasure to work with, and I look forward to working with him again. And as with other, like all other directors, like the script supervisors were called directors whisperers, so we're always going to be whispering in their ears throughout the take or whatever on set.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's funny that you mentioned that because we are supposed to be annoying. I feel like if we're not annoying to some degree, we're not doing the job correctly. You can't be too laid back and be like, it's whatever. I mean, you gotta stand up for certain things. You gotta mention certain things. If something's wrong, if something's bugging me, like I'm gonna have to bring it up. Just so it goes off my conscience,
I
and
feel
like
like
I'm like, all right, I brought it up.
so I feel like I missed out on that role then. Like I feel like that should have been maybe my calling, and I would have just had to delete the part that's like, don't worry about being liked. Just be the most annoying you can be. My natural. This is like nitpicky because I see all the
Uh-huh.
little things, and just
Uh-huh.
don't. But you do it with such grace, is what I want. Where I wanted to get in my commentary here is like you do it with such
Mhm.
grace, and your energy is so helpful and um so gentle in the way you do it, but you're firm, you're confident. It's like that perfect you just have the perfect personality um to kind of deliver this constant nitpicky information, but then make everyone feel very comfortable and supported as well.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that you
It's
have found that in your life, but I now want to get back to you being like the writer director yourself. But I
yeah,
am glad that you
yeah.
you do that other thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
it's
go ahead.
oh,
No,
you
go
wanna
ahead.
you wanna
Tell me what's
transition?
next. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I mean, because we can like chop this up a little bit, but like speak
Mhm.
any more towards like the script supervising you want, because I do really feel like the writing and directing, like you're saying, it's all like one and the same, right? All the information you do in one area feeds the other.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
So say anything else you want to say.
Yeah, and just to bring up another point, another reason why I did the script supervising when I first came out here is because in to Los Angeles, a lot of people you'll find in the industry they want to be writer director. So I felt like I needed to
Mhm.
find something that would help me pursue directing. So script supervising, I'm by the director all
Yeah.
the time. I see how other directors work. I know how I'm inside the head of a director somewhat. Like I know how others think, and I know how to help them. Um, and also, if other directors don't mind, I can help them achieve their vision and try to think like a director as well. So that's why I went down that route. Um, and then just to
I've seen you
backtrack
do that.
to
I've seen
yeah, I think it's very helpful. Um, and just to backtrack to go to the writing, because you were talking about like me being organized and whatnot. Um, I
yeah.
feel like when it comes to the like individual projects, yes, I try to structure it very. I try to be very organized. I try to break down. I create storyboards and lookbooks. Um, but I think, which might be a curse for other writers too, or just creators, is that I have probably 10 different projects going on simultaneously. I can never just finish one. I have to always be entertained by a never ending circle of different projects
Yeah.
and something that I can always rotate to, or just like, oh, I'm bored of writing this horror film. Let me go over to this comedy, or vice versa, you know? So that's I guess it's like
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword in a way because it keeps me entertained, but nothing
Mhm.
sometimes nothing ever gets done. Uh,
Yeah,
so
but do you remember what you've left off? Like, do you have an easy enough time, like, jumping back in, or do they start to
uh,
bleed
ye-
together?
yes, I always write down my ideas, um, like a little, just like a dump, a creative dump, and I break those dumps into sometimes it's like random quotes that will pop up in my head in my day, and I'm just like, oh, that's a funny quote. It makes no sense. There's no context, but let's just throw it in the dump, and maybe I'll use it in a script. But I also break down the dump according to
Yeah.
projects too. Hmm.
Where I'm gonna actually title this episode "The Dump."
The dump, yeah. Do it.
Lots of dumps. No, again, I would say, again, that part I can relate to because it's similar to dance for me. Is like I would just picture, and actually, writing, because John and I are co-writing something that's more, I would say, in my tonality of like dark humor. I mean, he
Hmm.
also enjoys dark humor, but I had those little like snippet moments. It used to happen with dance where I'd come up with like a movement phrase, or I would
Hmm.
have, like funny instances. But for me, they only ever come up in comedy. They're not like my brain doesn't write drama, it writes dark comedy. Like all
Okay.
day, every day, that's what accidentally is happening. So now I'm just writing it down. So I can relate to that part. I just like writing, I don't think uh I hate how solitary it is. I wrote one feature like through John's writing course that he, does, as I wanted to be able to say I've done it and took it, and I did. I completed it, but I have no desire to go back and tweak that and edit it and
Uh-huh.
kind of. I'm like, so I give people so much credit because I'm like, yeah, I don't need to. There's so many good, like I'm good on this, but I
It's
can't.
it's hard.
So how do you do all these different ones? You know what I mean?
Um, I forgot who said this, but they say don't ever like if you have like an idea or something for a script, um, and I go about this like every day I write, usually in the morning, whether it's like a couple of sentences or just like a whole page, whatever. But whenever you have like a really like an idea that you're really excited for, it might not be a good idea to just like write the whole idea out. So you're just like, oh, maybe I have like these three scenes I want to write. Maybe write like the two scenes so you have something to look forward to the next time you write. So that's what I started doing, and I think it's helping. But I can only speak to myself when it comes to the ideas in my head. Lucky enough, I mean, I do write the ideas down, so in case I do forget. But usually, I could pick up right where I left off. But with a lot of these projects, as if I never left. And I guess it's a gift in a way. Um, and I
It
always say
is.
like
No, I think you're like
I
it's your two sides of your brain because you're creative and you're organized. So it's like, you have this whole creative thing where you like different, a variety, and you like to jump into different characters and places
mhm,
and immerse yourself. But then your brain is organized enough to kind of have discipline, so you know where you are. I mean, you're very balanced.
mhm.
I feel,
Yeah, it's
you know.
it's fun though because it keeps me interesting. It keeps me interested. Because you can easily get bored by one project if you're just like, oh, I got to do this again. Then it becomes a chore, and you're like, all right, let's hop over to this brighter side of things on this other script or this other project. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
interesting. It's an
it's
interesting
how people
process, but
read.
I enjoy it.
But some people like to read like a number of books at one time. See, I'm a very like linear person in most of these, at least
Uh-huh.
at this phase in my life right now, where I like to read one thing, finish it, then read the next one, finish it. At a different time I felt differently, but right now I'm very like one and then the next and then the next. But you
Hmm.
write in that style where you're like, I'm gonna read this romance novel and then I'm gonna go to a sci-fi and then I'm gonna go to and so you
Well,
write in
I
the
wish
way
I
a
could
lot
do
of
that.
people do read books.
I wish I could do that with the books because I'm I'm a relatively slow reader. I feel I compared to other people who just like blast through books, where like it takes me a little bit to really read. So I don't think I would ever finish a book if I read multiple ones at the same time. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, but even
I agree.
there's sometimes where
I Do you read every single word? I read every word and then I think about it. Do you do that, or why do is that why you read slow?
uh I'll maybe it's like a concentration thing. Like I'll like sometimes I'm just like when you kind of space out sometimes when you read it and you're just like it all depends on the
Yes.
mood. Like sometimes like I'm in the mood. I've been reading, I have like a 5 day streak or something like that. I'm reading, I'm good. And then maybe I haven't read in a week. And then I go back and I'm just like spacing out sometimes. I'm just like, I just read half a page and I didn't retain anything. So let's go back and so I guess it just all depends on my mood.
No, that's 1000% what happens to me too. Like what you just said, I could have said it's like autobiographical. That's the same thing. Some people put a dot
Mhm.
at the bottom of their page to see how many times they've read the damn thing. It's like 5 times.
Oh.
But
That's funny.
like fail.
Um,
Now I see that I've read this page 10 times and I can't focus today. Good for me. But all right. So let's take your writing, so now I love to know how your brain works on this. So I want to now
Mhm.
move to kind of what you've been doing currently. Tell me about your project, or if there's any gap that we missed in there, then please fill in.
So I think, like I said, I was always writing. I've always had ideas since college. But it wasn't until the pandemic happened that I took one idea and I just ran with it. And I wrote my first feature. Actually, I wrote two features, and I surprised myself because we had so much
Okay.
time, and like I had nothing to
Yeah.
do. There was no little to no work at the time, and I was like, let's just do it. There's nothing going on. Let's just do it. And I think because my first complete feature I wrote, um, and it was more of like a personal one. So I think that's what made it very easy to run with. And I forgot what the timeline was, but I finished the first draft relatively quick, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I did the second one. Not as personal, but it was like I just wanted to make a mission of mine to just finish it, just get it out there, and I finished it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and as of recently, I revisited the first one that I wrote, the more personal one, and I've gone through like four drafts already. And and starting late last year, I finally started to apply to different competitions and whatnot, because what I started to realize while I was out here since 2019, that's when I moved. I realized that
Mhm.
I was getting a little bit complacent with the script supervising, and I wasn't really doing anything to work towards that goal of writing directing. So I guess the pandemic in a way helped me realize that. So yeah, that's when I started to like really shift and take it seriously. And I was like, all right, you got to make something, you got to create. That's what you came here to do. So yeah.
And there's something very interesting about the energy during pandemic, like obviously not to take away any of the like the dark and negative things that happened, but if
Hmm.
skipping right over that and just in you and your own little world, you were extremely productive. And I know John and I had a similar experience. Like he wrote Neon Bleed during the pandemic, and he just felt. I think we both felt like with like there was a different energy. Like there wasn't as much pressure. Like people weren't out there. Like there wasn't a lot of distractions or things going on really. And so in a way, it made him more creative, or it made it feel like, well, you got nothing to lose, or it made it feel like, I mean, I can't really put words at this current moment to the
Hmm.
feeling, but it just felt like um you had the time and space mentally to just sit there and do that, if you chose
Hmm.
to take advantage of it. Did you feel anything with the energetic shift in that way,
So
or was it literally
what's
like, I'm
funny
bored, I'm gonna do?
so what's funny when you bring that up, I guess it was a bit of both. Like there was one where I was, you're just sitting at home and just like, all right, I should be doing something. But then I also felt like, all right, there are other people like me doing the same thing. So maybe it's a good thing for me to start doing this as well, because I'm not the only one doing this. So I guess in my own mind, I started creating like this competition, and I was like, all right, people are doing this. You got to get ahead. You got to do it right now. So it was in that sense, yeah, it was a little bit of both. So I don't know if it was all in my head,
Yeah.
but I felt like a lot of other people were doing a lot of writing, and I feel like a lot of people did accomplish what they wanted to do over the pandemic in regards to writing too.
Yeah, a lot of creative people that, uh, manufacture their own, not that they work for someone else, but they're making their own projects. I do think it did that for a lot of people. Absolutely right. I heard the
Hmm.
same thing. But it is funny
Hmm.
what your mind is so powerful, right? It's like, oh, my brain told me this. Whatever it needs to tell you to get it done. Like I love that.
Hmm.
'Cause John felt like he's like, well, nothing's going on. It was almost the opposite feeling, but the result was the same. It's like, well, there's nothing going on. There's no pressure.
Hmm.
Let me just do this. It was like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
peacefulness. So, and you were like,
Hmm.
I bet everyone's doing this. I gotta go.
I
So
was, I
I
was,
love
people are
that.
just posting. People are posting. They're just like, yeah, I gotta write. I'm just like, well, I gotta write. I gotta do it. Like, which is cool. It's good
What
motivation.
am I doing all day?
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's well, very cool. Too. small feat. So that's great.
hmm And yeah, and I've gotten into like a nice pattern of like finding what time of the day what time of the day is a good time to write, and it's always in the morning where I feel most productive. Again,
Yeah.
I'm learning about myself. I'm learning what I like, how I think, and whatnot, and even just like and like grabbing inspiration because like during the pandemic, I had to grab side gigs too. So when I first moved here, I would work
Hmm.
in I was working service industry, or sometimes like the back of house
Hmm.
as well, or mostly back of house. But and I find myself, and then also when I first came out here, I didn't have a car of my own. So I was forced to use public transportation. I was forced to walk everywhere, hear conversations on the street. Another thing I feel like is if I was ever having a hard time writing, I would just go out and take public transportation or something and just listen to people. And you would always hear, there's so many crazy things that I've heard that I've written in scripts, you know, and, and even at work, we'll listen to the back, like in the kitchen or whatnot, just listening to people talk, um, guests coming to the restaurants. You see characters are living the life right now. You just have to, put them in your script. So it was just things like
Yes.
that. Like sometimes the best I the best thing to do for writing is to just stop writing and go out to the real world and be a witness.
Yes. They say the same thing for, I had a teacher say the same thing when I was taking an acting class, like, and then stop taking class and just, go live your life because that's where the real
hmm
answers are.
hmm
Oh, you're sitting here alone, solitary, and then like you already realize this, but a lot of people forget. It's like you just stop doing that and go outside and then just write things down. Like so much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What you don't need to reinvent. Just write down things
hmm
that are really happening. There's like some life is like crazier than anything you could ever actually imagine. So just
Yes.
use
hmm
it. So
hmm
okay, so tell me about now your most recent project.
So my most recent project short film is called The Offers Up. Uh, it first came to fruition 20 yeah, late last year. No, sorry. Early last year is when I first started to write it. I forgot when I actually had the idea, when it was, but it was when the lead actor Anthony Buzzata, who's also my former roommate and a good buddy of mine, he's the lead actor in the film. And I remember talking to him while we were still living together. I guess he was like, I forgot where he was. I think he was like in Maryland or New York or something like that. We were talking on the phone, and I was talking to him about like different things that I was selling. I think we were selling the couch on OfferUp, and I was giving him the
Okay.
rundown. I was like, "All right, yeah, we sold this, we sold this," and I don't know if I told him out loud or I just thought of it. I was like, "What'd be funny is like if I sold something that he didn't want me to sell that really just messed with him." So then that's how it came to fruition. I was like, "Oh, that would be a great short film." So the short that offers up is about a guy who sells a painting that belonged to his roommate. It's an ugly painting, but his roommate's necklace was hidden behind it, and it was hidden there because it was ugly, and he felt like no one would really, take it. So uh, then he has to try to get it back from the buyer without the buyer knowing that there's a something with monetary value there. And it's a comedy. It's not a drama. People have asked. It is a
Oh,
comedy, but yeah, and it was one of those things where
so
I
Val,
put my foot down. I was like,
I use OfferUp all
"What?
I
What'd
use
you say?"
OfferUp all the time. I didn't even click.
It's
I
great.
use OfferUp, the app, all the
Uh huh.
time.
Uh huh. It's great.
I didn't even
I
put
even
two
thought
and two
about hitting
together
them up.
here.
I even thought about hitting them up. Maybe for a project down the road. But
Sponsor.
yeah, right. Yeah. So what was I saying? I wrote the film, and then yeah, I ran with it, and and I wrote it to be like producible because what I also, like I said, I was becoming complacent with the scripting, and I realized that I didn't really direct anything. I've been doing a lot of writing, but I haven't been doing any directing since I've been out here. So I put my foot down. I was like, listen, there's not a lot of work going on. Yet last year was especially slow for a lot of people, including myself. So I was like, all right, let me just get a lot of my buddies. Let's just make a cool short film, nothing crazy. If it happens to be good, cool. So we made it. We had a blast filming it. And yeah, it turned, and then during the post-production process, I'm just watching it over and over again. And then you add the music, then you add the sound, and it's just like really funny. And I enjoyed doing it. And now we submitted to multiple festivals. Hopefully it gets somewhere. But that was the idea wasn't to get into festivals. It was just to jumpstart the directing. So
Because
because I had
you
that
got
itch
to
for
make
it.
yeah, and you got to make something if you want to be a director. You got to direct stuff, right? If you want to be a writer, you got to
Yeah.
write stuff. So,
Mm,
well, that's and obviously you and I both know this. It's hard to get anything made, whether it's a short film, a feature. It's like takes a lot of work, and so just the act of finishing something is rewarding, you know. But I think
exactly.
you were going to say you said it is a comedy, but you were going to say that do people think it's when you present it, they think it's going to be a drama or what?
Yeah, because it can easily be a drama. You're just like, oh, they sell something, they have to get it back. But people, that's a common question, follow-up question that I've always gotten from people. So I always have to just like make that distinction. Like, no, it's a comedy. But I can understand why you, at first, if I don't say it's a comedy, you would think it might be a drama or something, or more serious film.
But it's but good comedies, right? Have like drama plots. Like you have to, as a character, and I'll speak as an actor, like you
Mm,
can't, for the most part, be in on the joke. It has to be so serious to you, and that's why it's funny to the audience. So
hmm.
it's it's
Yeah, I
all a
mean,
drama plus good time.
yeah, yeah, and I guess because I wrote it with my buddies in mind. So like I knew everyone on the set. I knew the actors and whatnot. So I was like, all right, this is their voice. I'm gonna just write it in their voice. So I guess even like I guess the situation itself is not as dramatic. It's kind of just like a ridiculous film. And what's funny is that I don't even necessarily want to direct comedy. What I write is more
Oh,
drama. It's more serious, more horror, it's more thriller.
okay.
Even like just family drama or whatnot. But that's the first time I was like, all right, we're gonna do a comedy because it was just like it was an idea that was just like in my head and I just couldn't get it out. So I was like, I have to put it on paper, and then
Yeah.
it was doable, it was producible.
Well, and two thoughts came up. The first thought I think is the take home of our convo today, but our discussion, our off picture
Mhm.
discussion. The take home is just that you have a lot of range. So whether I like that you don't limit yourself of like, oh, I write dramas. It's like, no, I have an idea for a comedy. I'm going to follow it, and I can
Mhm.
produce it. It's producible. So I love
Mhm.
that you followed that, and it's like you know let the path take you where it's going to take you and then let someone else write your biography later, which is
Mhm.
it's what you do. You just follow the instinct. But number two, the other thought I had was you said you wrote it in the tone because you knew all these people. And do you find that your dialogue and like, I mean, it's so much easier to write when you just picture what they're actually saying versus you as
Mhm.
Val trying to sound like a bunch of different people. Does that help you at all,
Mhm.
like when you're writing, to picture
Well,
a person?
I don't know. I don't know. I try my best to when I'm writing a script, when I go into it, I try
Mhm.
to do the lookbook. I think that's my favorite part of the process is creating the lookbook or the pitch deck, whatever.
Yeah,
And creating the characters. Because then when I'm like, all right, it's gonna be like there's one character in one of my scripts where it's like, oh, it's like a mix of Mahershala Ali with Denzel Washington. Bam, cool. Now
yeah,
I have a face that I can write to. Um, and I'm inspired by
yeah,
people, my friends, people that I've met, people like my family, um, people that I
yeah,
hang out with like all the time. Like I just take little parts in my life and I kind of make
yeah.
little people, little characters,
It totally makes
and
it
yeah, it makes it
nice.
easy.
It does. I think it totally makes it helpful and very vivid and real. Then when someone's reading, it's like, oh, this feels real. You're like, well, kind of is a little collage of
Mhm.
life I've lived. But
Mhm.
okay, so people can't see this yet though because it's going to festivals. You haven't posted it anywhere yet.
So yeah, not yet. I want to see how it does with the festival route. Fingers crossed. But
Yeah,
yeah, we're just seeing where it's gonna go. And Yeah, again, like I said, I really just made it for fun. Didn't really have the festivals in mind, but I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
let's just do it. Let's just send it out there and then start working on the next one.
Good. And that's all you can do, right? Like you did your part, you send it out. It's now no longer up to you. You move on to the next creation and wherever it gets, it gets. But selfishly, I can't wait to see it. So let me know what
Hmm.
festivals it gets into and or where to view it because it sounds awesome.
I'll let you know.
Do you have do you what is next? That's a great little segue there, Valley. What is next for you?
Um, what is next? I mean, since finishing that project, I've been itching to direct another short, just shorts in general. But while doing that, I'm always just finishing my features that I'm writing, just so it's always ready. Um, I don't know. I think I want to do a horror short. That'd be cool. That's been on my plate for a little
Okay.
while.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that. I am so not in that world yet, but it's so weird. I've started to meet a few more people in that world. So it's you can always tell when there's synchronicities happening. So
Hmm.
maybe it's the time for you,
Maybe.
you know?
Yep.
Maybe it's the horror time for you. Maybe I'll connect
Yeah.
you
Right.
with some producers that do horrors that I've just spoken with. Maybe it's time for Val the future.
Maybe.
So anyway,
That would be great.
yeah, heck yeah. Hey, I always retain. See, that's where my brain is. I retain that kind of information. I'm like, oh, yes, I know someone that these two people, if they worked together, they could make great things over here. Like that's,
Uh-huh.
so I'm gonna be my own little bridge, I guess. And so, yeah, and they're in New York too. So how about that?
Oh,
Um,
very cool.
I can always cut this little chunk out too, and this could be our personal conversation later. But yeah, we'll
Nice.
talk about this more later.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to share before we go our separate ways?
Um, I could not necessarily. I mean, we can
You don't want to
nothing that
serenade
would
me with "Don't
be.
Stop Believing"?
What'd you say?
Did you don't want to serenade me with "Don't Stop Believing" or some uplifting Val, ism?
That's the, that's the part two. That's the next podcast when I come for next season.
Right, that is part two. I will leave.
I'll always be the last
I
one, the last episode.
Yeah, you have to be the last episode, and John, I'll kibitz in the next one, but John, you and John need to do a discussion so you can talk about the whole other sides of your brain because I was laughing a number of times during talking to you because it's like sounds like when he's talking, like you guys have this creative wild energy, and I'm always just like, oh,
Uh-huh.
you know? Not that I don't, but it's just yours is so similar of how it comes to you or how you
Uh-huh.
experience it that it's like it's just yeah, it's very familiar to me. So oh, Val, you're one of my faves. You know this, but I can't wait to be on set with you again very soon. I can't wait to see the things that you are creating yourself, writing and directing. And yeah, I wish you everything. I wish you all the best, and I'm excited to see where your journey goes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I always have a blast on set with you guys, so I'm always looking forward to that. But thank you so much.
Yeah, we can't wait. We can't wait. As soon as we ever know anything, you're one of the first calls. I hope you know that.
Oh, okay.
When there's information, Val gets a call within 24 hours.
I always get so excited when you guys
Oh,
when you guys text me. I'm like, "Oh, let's go." Because it's always because like you always have the projects that you work on, but like there are, you know, like your guys' sets like are just fun to be on. And I always like working with this like with I I, I like working with new crew and meeting new people, but I always know you guys bring on good people as well. So I like being a part of that.
no. Well, thank you for saying that because, the more I live life, the more I realize, that is actually the ultimate important part to me is because, we mostly remember the memories made on set where, you know, you're watching a finished project and you're going like, oh, remember when that happened that day? And it's like you have a whole different feeling about each project when you have worked it. So
Hmm.
for me, the memories of people on set, they can be amazing or they can be terrible, but it's like I don't know why, but I'm very drawn to, and I think that's why we called it La Familia instinctually. It's like bringing
Mm.
together those people. It just feels like, this is nice. Like, you know, you can look forward to an enjoyable time, and
Hmm.
we know how it goes. There's always going to be some shenanigans on set because it's life. It's
Yeah.
problem solving 24/7. But like you can enjoy it and kind of have great times, and of
Yeah.
course get the daily memes from Val in the scripty emails.
It's so funny when I send the first emails with the gifts, and I'm just like, I just so what's also funny is I worked my first union job like a week ago or so, and I was like, I don't know what the protocol
Congratulations.
is. Thank you, thank you. And I was like, I don't know what the protocol is, but I'm just gonna send a GIF anyway. And it was received well, and
Yeah.
everyone liked it. So I was like, all right, cool. There's some humor everywhere. Everyone has a sense of humor. So I think I'll just do that
I
all
think
the time.
sharing and being yourself. Being yourself is the
Uh-huh.
protocol, right?
Yes, yes. I'm learning
Good.
that.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, you always bring so much to every set. Like you are such a without you there, it would feel sad. Like it feel like was something was missing. And I genuinely mean that. And I would say that with or without you here to whomever would listen to me. But
Hmm.
yeah, don't stop bringing that because people need it and they want it.
Just
So.
just let me know when the next one is. I'm ready. I'm always ready.
Very soon, Valley, very soon. Okay, thank you again for being here in off picture discussion. We can't do one again super soon because we're going to be on picture, and that's right.
All right, cool. All right, thank you.